Hey, how you doing? We good? Cool. I know that you're probably tired, ate a lot of food. The real degenerates in here had a beer, maybe. I don't know. Jealous of you a little bit. Quick heads up, I have a cold, so if I start hacking, just pretend like you're not seeing it. If you see blood, then I guess come help me. That'll be one rule. I only have a really short amount of time to cover what I am really passionate about. And so I'm going to try to talk like 100 miles a minute. Just please try to follow along. I'm not going to do the whole, here's who I am and this is where I come from, because you don't care. I'm Ben, I'm from Flatirons. I'm 29, married, have a kid, I drive a Ford Focus. I don't know what else to tell you about myself. Ford Focus drivers in here, nice. I don't want to waste time doing that. Honestly, I'm glad you don't care who I am. All you're thinking right now is this. Can you, in 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, can you convince me or encourage me or inspire me to do this for just one more year at least? Because it's hard, and what we do is tough, and it's exhausting, and I really hope I can provide that today. Specifically, what I want to do is encourage you towards pursuing your mission with excellence, regardless of the cost. That's what I want to do, but I have to get started. So, here we go. I grew up in Dallas. I spent my whole life in Dallas. A suburb just north of it called Plano. Details on Plano at this time are really huge, really rich, and filled with very attractive people. Details on me at this time are I'm not huge, I'm not rich, and I'm what scholars call classically unattractive. Those are 3 traits that I've kept into adulthood, which makes me consistent. I also grew up in church, so we all know what that means. We're a crowd who knows what that means. It's Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, a whole slew of weekdays for potlucks and prayer meetings and left behind book clubs and stuff like that. I grew up in church. When I was a junior or senior in high school, I started playing in a band. So all my buddies would go off and they would, take their girlfriends to the mall or the movies or whatever. And I would never do that. I was always packing my buddies like beat up minivan full of guitars and amps and drums. And we would go downtown to play really crappy music for minimal crowds. Mostly comprised of our parents. And like whatever girl I could trick into dating me at the time, they were there. So like 5 people in the crowd. At the same time, this junior, senior of my high school year, the people that we deal with, I just got disconnected from God. I just decided, like, this can't be real. I don't believe in this anymore. Faith is not a part of my life. I still went to church twice a week because honestly, I didn't think it was worth the argument with my parents. It was like, I'll just keep going, and then in a couple months, I'll move off to college, 1,600 miles away. I'll never go to church again, and I don't have to tell them, and they don't have to know about it. But my bandmates had no background with religion or faith, so just the mere fact that I'm going to church twice a week, regardless of the fact that faith isn't a part of my life and I never talk to them about it, they're like, oh, Ben's like this super religious dude, he's so religious, he's the church guy. That is all set up to the story I want to tell you. So, we set up our stuff on the stage at this venue, and we're waiting a while for the set to start. And so I'm sitting outside of this venue with my drummer, and my drummer's name is Raymond. And details on Raymond are, he's got this crazy huge fro, he's an excellent drummer, he introduced me to the Smiths and the Cure, that's Raymond. And tonight, he's kind of doing this thing where he's just like really bummed. And he's never like that, so I go, Raymond, like, dude, are you okay? What's going on with you? Is everything all right? And he loses his freaking mind. Like, he starts asking all the really big questions. He's like, what's the point of life? I don't know if there's a point of life, and if there's a God, like, why don't I know him? And if there is, I should probably worship him, right? What happens if I don't? And if there is no God, are we just all walking around this world aimlessly with absolutely no purpose? And if that's true, if that's a fact, what am I supposed to do with that fact? And he's having what we all call an existential breakdown. But of course, I know what's actually going on, and it's scary. Because I know he's not dumping all this stuff on me because I'm in mere close proximity to the man. He's dumping all this stuff on me because I'm church kid, religious man in his brain. And he's expecting me to have answers for him. He's dipping his toe in the deep, dark waters of faith and he wants me to pull him in. The only problem is I have not swam in that ocean ever once for real in my whole life. But I went to VBS, so I robotically was like, Jesus, more than anything, wants you to go to church with me. And Raymond said yes. Until Raymond went to church with me. And it did not change Raymond's life, but it changed mine. I mean it, because I saw church, my church, through a whole new set of eyes for the very first time. I saw him through the outsider's eyes, through Raymond's eyes. And what I saw scared me. Like, I realized for the first time that my church is kind of dull, stale, completely uninviting, and frankly, just weird. It's a really weird place. I just hadn't noticed it before, because I grew up in there. I had spent 17 years there. Here are some examples of what I realized is weird for the first time. So my church looked like a funeral parlor. So we had like synthetic flowers that were still wilting somehow, and there were like people who looked like they wanted to be dead walking the halls, like some zombie movie. I realized the words we sang to our worship songs were really weird. Like I remember standing next to Raymond and being like, "God, let fire rain down from the skies," and that was like the first time I'm like, what does that mean? I certainly don't want God to do that like anytime soon. I have no umbrella that can prepare for such a rain. I realized that it was weird to pass Raymond a gold plate and just wait to watch and see if he's going to put money in it, without ever explaining like why that would be a form of worship, who should tithe right now, who shouldn't tithe right now, where the money's going. Instead, we're just like, stingy. The worst part was the talk. So my preacher was this like over tall, like aloof kind of guy. He walked and talked and looked like Woody from Toy Story, except he wasn't plastic, he was a real boy, I think. And he talked about communion, which is not a bad talk. It's a good talk, right? It's just that he used insider lingo. He used like assumed knowledge that Raymond didn't have. So everything my preacher said was scary. He's talking about Jesus like wanting us to eat his flesh and drink his blood for just like some remembrance of him. I'm sure Raymond's like, "Could you just take a picture of yourself or something?" And then to his shock, we pass him a plate of bread and of grape juice, of course not wine, and he gives me this look when he's got that plate that said 3 things. The first thing it said is, "What the F are you into?" The second thing was, "Am I now a cannibal?" Because we didn't do a good job of explaining communion. The third thing was, "Can you give me a stick of gum so I can get this flesh of Christ taste out of my mouth?" The only thing I could help him with this was the stick of gum, because that day with Raymond wrecked my view of church. It wrecked it. And afterwards, I still did the VBS robot thing. I was like, "Jesus wants you to come back next week." And he was like the nicest guy ever. So he's like, "Yeah, thanks, but that's not my thing. I don't think I really appreciate you inviting me." Whatever. I don't know if Raymond ever walked in church ever again. Last time I checked on him, he's in this awesome band. I'll share it with you later. And he's touring, he's doing really well. But I don't know if faith is a piece of Raymond's life anymore. And here is why I tell the story. It's because of this. My church was not filled with terrible people. A couple, but not like filled with them. My church was not completely ineffective, right? Like every now and then we would be a part of something. It's like, wow, this is bigger than myself. This is cool. My church was, however, completely dull, stale, and irrelevant for anybody who had not already grown up in that kind of environment. And the tragedy of that is Raymond decided it was a better use of his time to just hang out with all our pothead friends and bang on the drums for the rest of his life. It was a more excellent environment for my friend Raymond to do that than it was to spend time getting to know Jesus Christ himself. And it's a tragedy that I've been a part of and that you've been a part of. You can't think Raymond's stupid. You can't think Raymond's a bad person. I know for a fact he's neither one of those things. The fact that the most exciting, relevant, gracious, and incredible news that has ever been shared in the history of existence, which is the story of Jesus and what he does for you and what he does for me, the fact that it was rendered irrelevant for Raymond is not Raymond's fault. It was my fault. It was my church's fault. The environment of my church was not excellent. Because of that, there were bodies in its wake, and Raymond was one of them. Pursue excellence. Don't just pursue excellence for people like Raymond. Pursue excellence because Jesus himself was an excellent person and we are supposed to be more and more like him every single day, right? Pursue excellence because Jesus is excellent. There's all these stories of like massive crowds following Jesus around and he's got to like duck out because he's getting claustrophobic and he's like spend some time alone. There's stories where people are dying, literally, to reach out and just touch the edge of his cloak because they think that just mere proximity to this man is going to fix their lives. And they were right. We'd have dinner with sinners, big quote around sinners, and by end of dessert, they're ready to drop everything and follow this man. He's excellent. He was executed for being excellent. You don't execute someone who just like ambles about awkwardly in Birkenstocks. It's like, what are we going to do tonight? I don't know. You don't execute someone like that. You execute someone who is a threat. And you're only a threat to your enemy if you're pursuing your mission with excellence and with the strictest of purpose. And I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like pissing the enemy off. I like that idea. So, maybe some of you are thinking, yeah, excellence. I want to pursue excellence for Raymond, and I want to pursue excellence because Jesus was excellent. And now you're thinking, so what is excellence? What does excellence look like in my ministry? And honestly, what a letdown, I'm not going to answer that question. I can't. Excellence looks different for everybody. If you know how we do student ministry at Flatirons, we do the loud music, we do the bright lights that you see behind you, we do the rowdy games and impassioned talk and small groups led by highly capable, effective leaders. We like a big program, That's what we like. Doesn't mean that has to be what you like. I don't care. It's fine if that's not what excellence looks like for you. It might look completely different. Here is all I know. I have been commanded, and you have been commanded, whether you do vocational ministry or you're a volunteer, we have been commanded to become fishers of men, right? And the net I'm tossing in student ministry right now, which is modeled on the one my leaders toss on a weekend to adults, it's hauling fish right now. I'm going to keep tossing that net for the rest of my life until I don't see fish anymore, because that's not a good net. And if your net looks completely different than mine, I don't care. That's a liar quote. I really don't care. Honestly, take a breather. I'm not up here to advocate large program and loud music. I'm up here to advocate catching fish, and to do so excellently. To sum it up, I don't care what your net looks like as long as it's being a good net, as long as it's hauling fish. And honestly, maybe that's your only takeaway for today. Maybe you have to be able to step back and just examine what you're doing right now. And have the honesty and just the grace for yourself to say what I'm doing right now is just simply not working. And if you do, then you get to ask two questions that are terrible questions. They're hard questions. The first one is this: am I actually called to do this? And that's a question so scary that none of us ask it as often as we really should, honestly. If the answer is no, then quit. Chase Bank pays more anyway. Sorry. If the answer is yes, which I hope it is, because I want more of you in here with me, if the answer is yes, you have to ask yourself a follow-up question, which goes like this: if I cannot help that I'm called to do this ministry with students, but also what I'm doing is simply not effective right now, what do I change today? What do I take from Open Denver today and implement today to make sure that I don't trash this calling God has given me? Now I'm going to do this quick thing, this quick piece. I've met lots of people who smile in my face and we love what you're doing, and then they turn around and I hear them whispering, and it always goes like this, it's like, well, I could grow too if I played secular music, or I could grow too if I had bright lights. Don't do that. Honestly, I want to say don't do that to me because it hurts my feelings, but honestly, just don't do that to yourself. Don't sell yourself short. We're not growing. Our student ministry hasn't grown and isn't growing because of any of this crap. It's growing because I guarantee you, when you walk in here on a Tuesday or Wednesday or Sunday night, that our students can find Jesus Christ. And He's the sole source of growth. I could put a kegerator and a stripper pole in this room and triple attendance in a week. I'm not going to do it. I'm crazy. It would be unfaithful to my calling. It would be a misrepresentation of my God. Here's the truth. I'm going to say something, please don't hate me. Check. Oh, check. That really might be God going cut that out. I'm still going to say it. If you are that youth group that's got 3 or 4 or 5 of the Bible Bowl champion, Awana's attending, verse memorizing Christian kids, and that's all you have, is the piece to focus on. That's all you've got. And you have that excuse where it's well, I just care more about discipleship than I do outreach. Something I never saw Jesus doing, by the way. He did both. But if you say, I care more about discipleship than outreach, and I'm just interested in training the real Christians for the generation of tomorrow's church, or whatever. If that's the only kids you have, and all the Ravens of the world can't walk in your doors and find Jesus, all the Alondras of the world can't walk in your doors and find Jesus Christ, you missed the mark. You did. And the word the Bible uses for that, missing the mark, it's sinning. You just sinned. Alright? You missed the mark. So fix it. You can attract, and you can challenge, and you can disciple both kinds of fish, I promise. Jesus did it all the time. He'd give a talk, and he'd have like tax collectors and hookers and murderers who are like, I'm going to follow you now. And he'd also have disciples, the people closest to him, the people who should know better, right? Going, what does that mean? I don't know. How am I supposed to put that into my real life? All right, I'm running out of time. I'm out of time. I'm going to do this real quick, and then I'm done. The last thing I want to say shouldn't be a shocker, but honestly, it's going to offend some of you. Honestly, like in a church culture that throws around phrases like, I just want to pour into that kid and love on these kids, which I'm going to be like, if you like met my kids, they would totally think you're a pervert if they caught you saying stuff like that. They'd be like, I always assumed that about Ben, but it's fact. In a church culture that accidentally encourages the lie that you and I are solely responsible for the implementation and growth of faith in a student's life as if the Holy Spirit quit doing his job. In a church culture that accidentally focuses on self-importance, this is going to sound shocking, it shouldn't be, but you don't serve your students. Marla said the same thing. You don't. She's right. You don't serve them. You serve around them. You serve with them. You don't serve First Baptist Church of Bridge, Life, Water, of Denver, whatever, any more than I serve Flatirons Community Church. We don't serve those places. We serve at those places. When you and I, whether you're a volunteer or you do this for your job, when we said yes to Jesus, we became bound in service to our God and our King and no one else above him. So, whether you serve voluntarily, whether you raise your annual income, which I have so much respect for you if you do that, for real, if you get handed a bi-weekly paycheck from your church, do not forget who you are actually serving, because he's God and he demands excellence. He is the definition, alpha, omega, beginning and end of excellence itself. You simply have to. So shame on us, and I do mean me, us. Shame on us when we show up to our program or to our group home or to our house church or our small group or our video shoot, whatever your ministry looks like, whatever God gave you and trusted you with. Shame on us when we show up unprepared. Shame on us when, we go like, I'm just a little off today because I, was on the phone with that student till 3. We signed up for this. Shame on us when we throw together a talk the night we're supposed to give it. Shame on us when we're asking volunteers, the only people who aren't paid to be there, by the way, for game ideas, like 5 minutes before we're supposed to roll. Shame on us because you aren't serving your students. You aren't serving your church. Shame on us because we serve God. And he's notorious. He's historically notorious for being unpleased with anything less than your very first, your very best, and your very hardest earned offerings. So give it to him. Alright, I'm all done. Like a good teacher, I have like 3 takeaways. I never do that like on a normal night, but I do here because I was surrounded by teachers. Here are 3 takeaways. I'm done. First one is this: permission. I just want to hand you permission to just like do what you're doing. Like take it seriously. Like I know that parents and peers like just like imagine that what you're doing is childcare or something. And I know that sometimes leadership at your own church maybe or in your own institution doesn't even quite understand what you're doing. Take it seriously anyway, whether you're leading a small group, speaking from stage, playing Chubby Bunny for the millionth time, just running logistics or setting up chairs. I hand you permission to take it very seriously. And screw that. I got no authority in your life, right? I don't hand it to you. It's just commanded of you. It's inseparable from your calling. Another thing God's historically notorious for is if he puts a king in charge of his kingdom and the king does a bad job, he just strips it from him. So don't get your kingdom stripped from you. Take it seriously. Another thing is this, a reminder. So permission and a reminder. A reminder that the Holy Spirit, which unfortunately is like a weird subject to talk about now, right? Because we've either spiritually abused people with it, saying like, you don't speak in tongues and you're not saved. Or we're like on the other end of the spectrum, where it's like we don't want to be that so badly that we never talk about him anymore. But I know it's a weird subject, I'm going to say it anyway. The Holy Spirit, the very same exact Spirit that animated and operated within the life of Jesus Christ himself when he walked around on planet Earth. It is fundamental theology that we don't have a tamed, watered-down version of that Spirit inside of ourselves. We have the same exact thing. And he both commands you to excellence and makes you capable of it. The last thing is this: permission, reminder, and challenge. I offer a challenge. If it's true, if you believe that the Holy Spirit's inside of you and that those embers are burning inside of you, put a little gas on the fire. Ask him to do that for you. And just watch. I dare you to just watch what happens to your heart of stone, to your ministry, to your sense of calling, and to your outreach. The truth is that the ministry I now love, student ministry, the ministry that we all love in this room, student ministry, wrecked my life for like 6 or 7 years, from like 18 to 25. It had a key role in wrecking my life. And we get to be, if we want, a generation of leaders who steady the ship, so that we don't look back in our wake and see floating bodies anymore. We don't look back in our wake and see Raymonds and Alondras. And we can do that together. But only if we pursue excellence, no matter what we are doing. That's it. I went way over. Thank you.